Bechoros Daf Choftes. As we learned that if you have a bechor, you can't eat from it until it has a mum. The only person that can decide whether it's a mum or not is a professional. This professional cannot take money for his job. He can't take money for checking a bechor unless he's a big chassid like Aliyah of Yavna. And in that situation, Chachamim instituted a set fixed price, 4 isarim for a smaller animal to check, and 6 isar for a larger animal, because a larger animal is a lot harder to check. The Gemara said there's a havamina that perhaps Aliyah shouldn't get paid if the outcome is no good for the owner. If he says to the owner, your animal doesn't have a mum, now the owner can't eat it, why should he pay for the checkup? The Gemara says he has to pay, because if he wouldn't pay, people would say that the reason why Aliyah always says that the animal has a mum is because only in that situation he gets paid. On the other hand, we have to be concerned, since he gets paid for saying that it doesn't have a mum, he's going to constantly say that it doesn't have a mum, because the guy has to come back with his animal over and over until it gets a mum, and he'll get paid every single time. The answer is, you only get paid once per animal. Says the Mishnah, excuse me, anytime a dayan receives money to do the din Torah is no good. If a witness gets money for his testimony, no good. If somebody gets paid to sprinkle the paraduma water or to mix it, it's no good. How do I know that you're not allowed to take money for learning Torah? You're not allowed to learn in Kailal. That was in those days, and nowadays it's a little different, the Shulchan Aruch says. Or how do I know you can't take money for being a dayan or a witness? Because it says, Re'ei limati eschem. Look, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I taught you and it was for free, so I expect you to teach others for free. If a person is looking for a good Rebbe and he can't find one unless he has to pay for it, he's allowed to pay the Rebbe, even though the Rebbe is over Isser, and that's Lifnei Iver L'Sidim Michshal. Why? Because it says, Emes Kanei, you shall buy the truth, even if it has something to do with the other person being over Isser. If a person is Mekadesh a woman with paraduma, with the action of sprinkling her, that's a mitzvah and she's not Mekudeshes. However, if he says, I want to be Mekadesh you with the value that it took me to go fetch this water, which was very difficult, that Hana is Mekadesh. Says the Mishnah that if a person takes his dayan or his witness, and they happen to be a kohen, and by taking them to the din Torah, they become tameh, and now it costs them more money to buy food. Chulin is more expensive than truma. This individual can provide the kohen, the dayan, with food and drink, and he doesn't have to be concerned that it looks as if he's paying him, because he's just filling in the loss. How does a kohen become tameh? A kohen is not allowed to make himself tameh tumas meis. So the Gemara says there's 3 possibilities. Either the kohen walked through a field called Beis HaPras, there was a grave that went missing, and we're worried that somebody plowed the field and unburied some bones, and the kohen is touching the bones. So if he blows it with his mouth, he's allowed to go through this field, but he's usher to eat truma once he goes through the field. Another way is if people went through the field, they created a path, then the kohen is allowed to go through the field, but he's not allowed to eat truma. And the third possibility is that we're not talking about Tmei Meis, we're talking about Tumas, Nevela, and Sheretz. That a kohen is allowed to touch on purpose, and he doesn't have to be worried about that. Says the Mishnah that if the dayan or the witness were elderly people, you're allowed to give them a ride in your car or on your donkey, and you pay them like a payal batal, like a worker who's not working, he's out of a job. What does that mean? Abai explains. There's 2 types of people. There's a person who has a very comfortable job in an air-conditioned room, and all he's doing is he's selling jewels. The other person works really hard under extreme conditions and makes half the salary of the first guy. He's a carpenter. The first guy, if you say, hey, how much would you take to be a paraduma sprinkler? He wouldn't really care to be a paraduma sprinkler. He doesn't gain much. But the other guy, that's in horrible conditions, he'll give up his job in a second, even though it means much less salary, even though there's a cut in the salary. So that difference you have to pay him. It says the Mishnah, if somebody is suspected of creating mumim in animals in bechorim, in order to be able to eat them, he's over yisurim, and therefore you can't buy certain things from him. You can't buy venison from him, you can't buy deer meat, because deer meat is interchangeable with veal. You're also not allowed to buy from him male hide that's untanned. The point of this whole sugya is that anything that's difficult to create, this individual is worried that if Chacham find out that he creates mumim b'chorim, they'll take away his things and he'll have a great loss. But things that are easy to come, like untanned hide of a male, that he's not worried about, and Mamela it's also. Female hide is not from a Bechor, so L'chari you should be able to buy from him. However, there's a machlekes. Rabbi Elazar says you're allowed to buy from him because you could tell what's a female, what's a male. Hanakama says you can't tell what a female is because you can cut out that whole area and say that mice ate away at it. You're not allowed to buy wool, even if there's some work done to it to clean it out, because that's not considered a lot of work. However, if he took the wool and he wove it, that's a lot of work. And as we said before, anything that's a lot of work, you're allowed to buy from him because he's worried about Chachamim taking away from him. And therefore, you're also allowed to buy felt clothing, like a black hat is made out of felt. That kind of clothing, even though it's not woven, it's just pushed together, but it's a lot of work. Another Mishnah, somebody that is suspected of not keeping Hilchos Shmita, you're not allowed to buy from him flax, even if it's combed and there's some work to it. That's not enough work that it should concern him. But you're allowed to buy from him woven flax and chains of flax that are not woven, anything that's a lot of work. We know that, as we mentioned before, that the price of chulin fruit is a lot more than the price of truma because not a lot of people that eat truma. So there's not a big market for it, so it's much cheaper. So therefore, somebody that's suspected of taking truma fruit and passing it off as chulin fruit and taking more money for it, so also you're not allowed to buy from him, according to the Tanna Kamma, you're not allowed to buy from him anything, even salt water. That has nothing to do with truma. Reb Shimon says no, only things that have to do with truma. His lashon is kol davar sheyesh by zika le trumo maisros. But salt water has nothing to do with trumas and maisros. What does the word kol come to add? Even the innards of fish, which you add some oil, olive oil to, and that does have to do with trumas and maisros. So that you're not allowed to buy from him. Says the Gemara, a story that there was a shaychet who used to sell chaylev that was usher, the chaylev of the kidneys, and you tell people is the chaylev of the intestines, which is mutter. You'd pass it off, and Rava gave him a penalty and said he's not allowed to sell even nuts. The question is, that would be, according to Tanna Kamma, you can't sell even salt water. According to Reb Shimon, it has to do something only specifically with what he did wrong. Nuts has nothing to do with chaylev, with fat. Says the Gemara, no, it did have to do, because what you do is you take these nuts, which was like candy in those days, and bribe children that they should bring the usher chaylev from their father's butcher shop, and then you take that chaylev and sell it off as kosher chaylev. So therefore we punished him in those nuts, specifically those nuts, because it had to do with what he did. Have a wonderful day.